Hi friends, and welcome to our Friday reading lesson. I hope you guys have had a great week of learning so far. I miss you all, and I'm glad you could tune in. Today we're going to do our final nonfiction text structure. So far this week, we've talked about a lot of nonfiction text structures. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys, and we can kind of go through those and get started on our new one. Alrighty. Go ahead and make this larger so you guys can see it. Okay, so this week we've covered a lot of nonfiction text structures, and we're going to continue to use these text structures and read about them throughout this nonfiction unit. So don't feel like you have to know them all right now, but it's really good to keep remembering them and keep practicing them as you're reading nonfiction, recognizing which ones you're reading. So the first one that we talked about is the descriptive text structure. And that's when an author is using descriptions to describe something that you need to know about in their book. So it's a certain topic or a person, but using descriptions to tell you about them. So whether that's talking about what a person looks like, or maybe what an apple tastes like, using those descriptions. The second text structure that we talked about is the comparison, and that's compare and contrast. We talked about how you can have two or more items that you compare and contrast. And so when you compare, you find what's alike about them, what's similar about them. When you contrast, you find what's different about them. Earlier this week, we looked at cats and dogs. We decided that they are alike because they're both animals that have 4 legs, but they're different because one is a cat and one is a dog. Their hair is different, their ears are different, lots of other things as well. The next text structure we talked about was chronological order. We are familiar with that one. We talked about it a few times this year. We know that the word or the root chrono means time. So this is the order of time. Typically you see this when we have a biography and someone is going from the beginning of someone's life to the end of their life, or to maybe a special point in their life, but we're going in the order of time. When we read the book about Christopher Columbus, we started with his birth, and we ended the book when he discovered America. So we went through the time order of those events. The next text structure we talked about was cause and effect. And when something happens, there is an effect. We talked about that yesterday. When I shake up my Dr. Pepper, that's the cause. The effect, when I open it, it's going to explode on me. There is a cause and effect with everything. Today, the final one we're going to talk about is problem and solution. When there is a problem, oftentimes we try and find a solution to that problem. So we're going to scroll through, and I want to talk some more about that before we get into our story. A problem is typically introduced at the beginning of a nonfiction book, and then the solution is often given at the end, but sometimes it's given in the middle of the book. When we have a problem and solution text structure, we have to think to ourselves, what is the problem in the text? We also think, how did they try and solve the problem? And at the very end, was the problem solved? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. Today in our story that we're going to read, we are reading a biography. It is a nonfiction book, and it is about Althea Gibson. You may have heard of her before, but she is someone who is famous and someone who is very important in the history of tennis. So this book is called Nothing But Trouble, The Story of Althea Gibson, and it's by Stu Stauffacher, and it's illustrated by Greg Couch. Okay, I'm going to start reading, and as I read today, I want you to notice the text structure. Think to yourself, what is the problem in the story, and how do they try to solve the problem throughout the story? Althea Gibson was the tallest, wildest tomboy in the history of Harlem. Everybody said so. If you guys don't know where Harlem is a neighborhood in New York. Her mama said, just give that child a nickel for a loaf of bread and see what happens. Soon as she catches sight of those boys playing stickball, my bread is long forgotten. Her daddy said, that girl stays out so late playing basketball, she doesn't even come home some nights. Her teacher said, half the time she doesn't even return from recess. I'll see a lot more of Althea if I taught lessons on the playground. The policeman said, "She's a fast runner, all right, but you can't make a sport out of nicking sweet potatoes. That's against the law." They all said, "Althea Gibson, you're nothing but trouble." So I'm already hearing a problem in this story. What do you think the problem is so far? I'm noticing that the problem is that Althea is getting into trouble. And she's getting into trouble because she wants to be active. She wants to be outside playing sports. She wants to be running around. She wants to be playing with her friends, playing basketball, being active. But she's not focusing on her responsibilities, and that's getting her a reputation that she's a troublemaker. Althea didn't care what they said. She knew she would be somebody someday. Somebody big, like Charlie Parker or Sugar Ray. In the meantime, just one thing to care about in this world: the game. I wonder what game she's talking about. Give her a stick, a paddle, a hoop, or a ball, and Althea Gibson was good to go. Buddy Walker was the play leader down on 143rd Street, where Althea lived. At night, he was a musician in one of Harlem's society orchestras. When Buddy watched Althea play paddle tennis, he didn't see nothing but trouble. No, sir. Except maybe for that poor rubber ball, what he saw in Althea was pure possibility. So I have a prediction that Buddy is going to be the one to help find a solution to Althea's problem. I feel like Buddy is going to be a positive influence. And the reason I think that is because Buddy sees something good in Althea. He doesn't look at her and see trouble. He sees possibility. Times were hard, but Buddy scrounged up enough money to buy Althea a stringed tennis racket at a secondhand store. It didn't look like much next to the big wooden paddle Althea normally used for street tennis. After she practiced a little, Buddy asked a friend at the Harlem River tennis courts to play a few sets with her. As Althea covered the court, Buddy forgot all about the wild tomboy who roamed the streets of Harlem. What Buddy saw was music in the way that she moved. Do you think Buddy really heard music when she moved around the tennis court? I don't think so either. I think that's an expression that means that he thinks that she moves musically or moves beautifully on the tennis court. He thinks that she has that potential or that possibility to be an amazing tennis player, and he sees that in her. Buddy wasn't the only one. Other players stopped their games to get a good look at it. Althea saw the other players watching her. It felt good, made her feel like she was somebody. "Althea," Buddy said after the game, trying to contain his excitement, "this is Juan Cyril, a friend of mine. We have an idea." Juan Cyril belonged to the Cosmopolitan, the ritziest tennis club in Harlem. All the Sugar Hill Society people belonged there. "You play tennis here," Buddy told Althea. "You can make something of yourself." After the members of the club saw what Althea could do, Buddy and Juan convinced a few of them to pay for lessons with the club's one-armed tennis pro, Fred Johnson. Fred tried to improve Althea's ways on and off the court. While Althea loved playing a new game in a big fancy court, she didn't like being told how to act. "Never said I wanted to be a fine lady," she complained to Buddy. So I can tell that Althea is enjoying the tennis and enjoying the fun part that she's always enjoyed, but she's not enjoying having those guidelines and the structure and the restrictions that she's had in the past. So I feel like we're going to have another little problem coming up. Unfortunately for her, the members of the Cosmopolitan didn't like her wild ways either. They shook their heads and whispered, "Nothing but trouble, that one." Miss Rhoda Smith was a nice society lady who bought Althea her first tennis outfit, so she'd look like all the other players on the court. She made time to play regularly with Althea and to instruct her in the polite rules of the sport. Now, Althea, when a loose ball rolls onto the court, you don't just bat it out of the way in any old direction. You send it back to the player it belongs to. That's how it's done in court tennis. Oh, Miss Smith, Althea muttered. Can't we just play tennis? Buddy tried to explain the importance of keeping cool. You've got to decide, Althea. Are you going to play your game, or are you going to let the game play you? When I go to the jazz club, I play like a tiger, but I wear a tuxedo. Althea said, throwing her tennis racket on the ground. I don't fit in with these rich society folks. I'd rather punch somebody's lights out at Stillman's gym. Buddy said, Althea, I still believe. How do you think Althea's feeling at this moment? I feel like she's feeling very much like an outsider, like she just can't find her groove. She enjoys the sport, but she's not quite fitting in the way she wanted to or expected to. A year later, Althea was in her first real tennis tournament. She played well, but she lost in the finals to Nana Davis. After I beat her, Nana told the reporters, she headed straight to the grandstand without bothering to shake my hand. Some kid had been laughing at her and she was going to throw him out. I tell you, Althea Gibson is nothing but trouble. It took time, a good long time, but slowly Althea learned that wanting to slug her opponent as soon as she started losing her match made her a worse tennis player than if she kept her cool. With Buddy's help, Althea realized she could dress up in white and act like a lady and still beat the liver and lights out of that tennis ball. Tennis changed Althea, all right, but just as importantly, Althea changed tennis. She did it, ladies and gentlemen. She did it. Althea Gibson has won the championship here at Wimbledon's center court. With that, Althea Gibson became the first African-American, man or woman, to ever compete and win the coveted Wimbledon Cup, long considered the highest honor in tennis. And she never did forget the man who first saw the champion of the world in the wildest tomboy in Harlem. So for those of you that don't follow tennis, the Wimbledon is a tournament, and it's almost like the Super Bowl, but of tennis. It's the biggest tournament that they have, and if you win it, it's just like winning a Super Bowl or winning an NBA championship. It's huge, and Althea was the first African-American, period, to win it, male or female. So it's really amazing what she did and the barriers that she broke, but what is most amazing is that Althea was able to change and learn from Buddy and her other mentors. In the beginning of the story, we had a problem. Althea was known as a troublemaker. She was someone who didn't really take care of her responsibilities. She just wanted to play and just wanted to have fun and just wanted to be outside. As the story progressed, we saw that there was a solution to this problem. What do you think the solution was? I noticed that the solution began when Buddy bought her the tennis racket and started getting her tennis lessons. When Althea started taking tennis lessons, she had a place to, we're going to use the word harness, which means to kind of gather and collect her energy and use it in the right way. When Althea was younger, she was using her energy all over the place, getting in trouble and doing things that she shouldn't be doing. When she started using that energy in a positive way towards tennis, she saw great things happening. So the solution to her problem of getting in trouble was tennis. The solution was that she began to invest in tennis and want to become someone in the tennis world. So as you read your nonfiction stories, just make sure that you're keeping up with, is there a problem in the story, and is there a solution to the problem? Today, for your Seesaw assignment, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and show you what you're doing. All right, so your assignment is called Reading 424, Problem and Solution. You're going to read a book in Epic, and it's called, let me pull it up, Endangered and Extinct Birds. You're going to read this book, and then when you're done, you're going to fill out this chart. What was the problem or the problems in the book, and what is the solution or the solutions that you saw as you read? Once you're done, you can go ahead and submit that. And thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you have a great afternoon. See ya.